minutes. 1 minute.
Up to your waist in water, up to your eyes in sludge, using the kind of language that makes the sergeant blush. Oh, wouldn't join the army, that's what we all inquire. Don't we picture the poor civilians sitting around the fire? Oh, 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 it's a lovely war. It's a lovely war. Oh, wouldn't be a soldier, eh? Oh, it's a So the sergeant brings a breakfast up to bed. Oh, 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 it's a lovely war. Oh, what do we want with eggs and ham when we got plum and apple jam? Oh, for the right turn, how do we spend the money we earn? Oh, 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 it's a lovely war. Oh, 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 it's a lovely war. It's a lovely war. Oh, what will be a soldier, eh? Oh, it's a shame to take the pay. As soon as the valley is gone, we feel just as heavy as lead. But we never get up till the sergeant brings our breakfast up to bed. What? Oh, 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 it's a lovely war. What do we want with eggs and ham when we got plum and apple jam? Bumper, retard, we spend the money we earn. Oh, 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 it's a lovely war. Come to the cookhouse door, boys, sniff of the lovely stew. Oh, as it says the colonel gets better grub than you. Any complaints this morning? Do we complain? Not we. What's the matter with lumps of onion floating around your tea? Oh, 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 it's a lovely war. Oh, wouldn't be a soldier, eh? Oh, it's a shame to take the pay. As soon as the valley has gone, we feel just as heavy as lead. But we never get up to the sergeant brings our breakfast up to bed. Rats. Oh, 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 it's a lovely war. Oh, wasn't wanting eggs and ham when we got plum and apple jam. Oh, for the right turn, how do we spend the money we earn? Oh, 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 it's a lovely war. Oh, 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 it's a lovely war. Lovely war. Be a soldier, eh? Oh, it's a shame to take the pay. As soon as the valley is gone, we feel just as heavy as lead. But we never get up till the sergeant brings our breakfast up to bed. Oh, 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 it's a lovely war. Oh, we want with eggs and ham when we got plum and apple jam. Comfort, retard, how can we spend the money we earn? Oh, 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 it's a lovely war.
In November 1918, the engineer in charge of the French North Region Railways, Arthur Pierre Toubeau, was instructed to find a suitably discreet place which would accommodate 2 trains. By coincidence, on the outskirts of Compiègne, in the forest of Rotonde, lay an artillery railway emplacement. Set deep within the wood and out of the view of the masses, the location was ideal. Early in the morning of the 8th of November, a train carrying Marshal Ferdinand Foch and British officers arrived on the siding to the right, nearest the museum. The train formed a mobile headquarters for Foch, complete with a restaurant car and office.
At 0700 hours, another train arrived on the left-hand track. One of the carriages had been built for Napoleon III and still bore his coat of arms. Inside was a delegation from the German government seeking an armistice. There were only 100 meters between the two trains, and the entire area was policed by gendarmes placed every 20 meters.
For 3 days, the two parties discussed the terms of an armistice until at 0530 hours on the 11th of November, 1918. The Belgian representative, General Maxime Weygand, read out the armistice conditions, and Matthias Erzberger, the leader of the German delegation, signed the armistice document. Within 6 hours, the war would be over. Within minutes, news of the armistice, the ceasefire, had been flashed around the world that the war, which was meant to end all wars, was finally over.
And yet it wasn't, because the ceasefire would not come into effect for a further 6 hours at 11 a.m. So troops on the front line would be sure of getting the news that the fighting had stopped.
The hour was chosen by Admiral Sir Roslin Weems, First Sea Lord and Britain's official delegate to oversee the armistice. He was explicitly ordered by his Prime Minister, David Lloyd George, to delay the terms until 3 p.m. to coincide with Parliament sitting, so that the Prime Minister could get the credit of announcing it officially to the House on the hour. Weems thought the delay would cause unnecessary killing and decided that the 11th hour would add to the poignancy of the date. Lloyd George was furious.
It had been 4 long and bloody years since the cream of British youth had gleefully answered the call.
He went away to do his bit the other day, with a smile on his lips and his lieutenant's pips upon his shoulder, bright and gay. As the train moved out, he said, "Remember me to all the birds." Then he wagged his paw and went away to war, shouting out these pathetic words.
Goodbye, goodbye, wipe the tear gaping here from your eye. Though it's hard to part, I know I'll be tickled to death to go. Don't cry, don't sigh, there's a silver lining in the sky. Once more, old thing, cheerio, chin, chin, now put to goodbye.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I shan't beat about the bush. I shan't tell you it's all tickety-boo over there in France. There's been too much of that nonsense already. I know. I've been there. I've seen it myself. So I'll tell you straight, it's no picnic. It's hard slog. Only one question to ask yourself about this war. Who would you rather see marching through your streets? Us or the Hun? Because, mark my words, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't stop them out in France, the Germans will be here, right on your doorstep. They'll come marching through, burning your houses, killing your children and violating your women. They've beaten brave little Belgium, swallowed her up in one gulp. And now they've taken a fair slice of France too. Unless we beat them at their own game, they'll gobble us up as well. Well, do you want the Hun over here? Do you?
No.
No.
Shall we knock the stuffing out of them?
Yes.
Go on then, into the ranks and fight for your king and country. Don't stay in the crowd and stare. You're wanted at the front. Enlist today.
Who's for the game? Who's for the game, the biggest that played, the red crushing game of a fight? Who'll grip and tackle the job unafraid, and who thinks he'd rather sit tight? Who'll toe the line for the signal to go? Who'll give his country his hand? Who wants a turn to himself in the show, and who wants a seat in the stand? Who knows it won't be a picnic? Not much, yet eagerly shoulders a gun. Who would much rather come back with a crutch than lie low and be out of the fun? Come along, lads, but you'll come on all right, for there's only one course to pursue. Your country is up to her neck in a fight, and she's looking and calling for you. Who'll earn the empire's thanks? Will you, my laddie? Who'll swell the victor's ranks? Will you, my laddie? When the procession comes, banners and rolling drums, who'll stand and bite his thumbs? Will you, my laddie? Jessie Pope.
Just a day, another day, beneath the Belgian sun, past grave on grave, row upon row, until I see the name John Carter, carved in stone, with harp and crown, little crosses in the ground, and standing there, my silent prayer is for a boy who died a soldier. He lied, will not grow old. Heroes that don't come home, here they lie in Belgian fields and Picardy. Just the recruits and soldiers' boots from Ireland's shores to me. This living hell, this Paul Capel, where young men fell like you, John Carter. All around, the harp and crown, the crosses in the ground, stand up in proof, the bitter truth, the waste of youth that lies forgotten. We lad will not grow old, heroes that don't come home, here they lie in Belgian fields and Picardy. Now tell me, John, before I go on, what did you come here for? With islands bold, your life untold, 14 years old, to die a soldier. And all around, the harp and crown, the crosses in the ground, what cause was served, so undeserved, heroes that don't come home, sing out for all their souls, here they lie in Belgian fields and Picardy, here they lie in Belgian fields and Picardy.
Another letter home from France,
I wonder how many more are all right before this war is over. 11th of November, 1918. The gross foe. Early morning. My dearest parents, we started away just after dawn from our camp, and I think it was about an hour later that we encountered the enemy. They were on the opposite side of the valley, and as we came over the brow of the hill, they opened on us with rifle fire and shrapnel from about 900 yards. We lost 3 officers and about 100 men killed and wounded. I do not want any more days like that one.
Sir, a message from Paris. It looks important, sir.
Give it here. Official radio from Paris, 6:01 a.m., November the 11th, 1918. Marshal Foch to the Commander-in-Chief. 1. Hostilities will be stopped on the entire front beginning at 11 o'clock, November the 11th, French hour. 2. The Allied troops will not go beyond the line reached on that date until further orders. Signed Marshal Foch, 5:45 a.m. Well, lads, fini la guerre.
It looks like it. Fini la guerre indeed. What shall we do now?
Well, I know what I'd like to do. I'd like to get on one of those little horse-drawn canal boats in the south of France and lie in the sun for the rest of my life.
I walked over the banks of the Meuse River to see the war ending. The shelling was still heavy, and as I walked down the road, it got heavier and heavier. It seemed that every battery in the world was trying to burn up its guns.
The men on both sides had decided to give each other all they had, their farewell to arms. It was a very natural impulse after their years of war, but unfortunately, many more fell that day.
I have a rendezvous with death at some disputed barricade when spring comes back with rustling shade and apple blossoms fill the air. I have a rendezvous with death when spring brings back blue days and fair. It may be he shall take my hand and lead me into his dark land and close my eyes and quench a breath. It may be I shall pass him still. I have a rendezvous with death on some scarred slope of battered hill when spring comes round again this year and the first meadow flowers appear. God knows 'twere better to be deep pillowed in silk and scented down, where love throbs out in blissful sleep, pulse nigh to pulse and breath to breath, where hushed awakenings are dear. But I've a rendezvous with death at midnight in some flaming town, when spring tripped north again this year, and I to my pledged word am true. I shall not fail that rendezvous. Alan Seek died July 1916 on the Somme.
That day, many hundreds died, and thousands more were injured. In fact, the final day of World War I would produce nearly 11,000 casualties, more than those killed, wounded, or missing on D-Day, when Allied forces landed on the shores of occupied France almost 27 years later. What is worse is that hundreds of these soldiers would lose their lives being thrown into generals who knew that the armistice had already been signed.
The recklessness of General William M. Wright of the 89th American Division is a case in point.
The division has been on the front line for far too long without any chance of proper bathing facilities. Look over there, Lieutenant, and tell me what you see.
A small town, sir. Stenay, according to the map.
Indeed, Lieutenant. A small town with a public bathhouse. The men are filthy and exhausted. If we take the town, they can be refreshed, have a wash and shave.
But, sir, what with the armistice?
Order the men to advance. I doubt there is a German left in the place.
But there was. As the doughboys passed through Pouilly, a 10.5 centimeter howitzer shell landed in their midst, killing 20 Americans outright. All told, Wright's division suffered 365 casualties, including 61 dead in the final hours. Stenay would be the last town taken by the Americans in the war. Within days, it too could have been marched into peacefully, rather than paid for in blood.
Orders being orders, they didn't get to choose whether or not to risk dying so they could have a soak in the tub. They were simply handed their orders and sent into battle, even after they'd been told that the armistice was only hours away. Pershing knew about the armistice. Wright knew about the armistice. Everybody down to the newest private knew about the armistice. But they were sent anyway, because Wright thought that those who survived might want to have a bath and a shave.
Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. While you've a Lucifer to light your bag, smile boys, that's the style. What's the use of worrying? It never was worthwhile. So pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile.
The final British soldier to be killed in action was Private George Edwin Ellison. At 9:30 a.m. on November the 11th, Private Ellison of the 5th Royal Irish Lancers was scouting on the outskirts of the Belgian town of Mons, where German soldiers had been reported in a wood.
Aged 40, Private Ellison was a pre-war regular soldier. His number, L/12643, is that of a man who enlisted in the early years of the 20th century. He may even have been a Boer War veteran, considering his age.
It must have been odd for Private Ellison to be back in Mons again. This is where his war started 4 years earlier, when he was part of the British Expeditionary Force, retreating from Mons in August 1914, just weeks after the outbreak of the war. Almost 1 million British soldiers had been killed in those intervening years, yet almost miraculously, Private Ellison had so far escaped uninjured. In just over an hour, the ceasefire would come into force. The war would be over, and Private Ellison, a former coal miner, would return to the terraced street in Leeds to see his wife Hannah and their 4-year-old son James.
And then the shot rang out. George was dead, the last British soldier to be killed in action in World War I.
Quite a number of the final casualties were at Mons in Belgium, ironically the location of one of the first major battles of the war in 1914. In a cemetery just outside of Mons, in the village of Nivelle, there are 8 named British graves of soldiers. 5 are from August 1914, while 3 are dated November the 11th, 1918.
16285, Private John Joseph Murray, Royal Irish Regiment. 16586, Private John Stone, age 19, Royal Irish Regiment. R/6329, Able Seaman Harold Edgar Walpole, age 19, RNVR.
The Commonwealth War Graves Commission states that their records show that 863 Commonwealth soldiers died on November the 11th, 1918, although this figure also includes those who died on that day of wounds received prior to November the 11th.
As the minutes ticked towards the 11 a.m. ceasefire, more shots would be fired and more men would die.
At 10:45, another 40-year-old soldier, Frenchman Augustin Tribouchon, was taking a message to troops by the River Meuse, saying that soup would be served at 11:30 after the peace, when he too was killed.
Augustin Tribouchon's grave, along with all those French soldiers killed on the 11th of November 1918, is marked 10/11/18. It is said that after the war, France was so ashamed that men would die on that final day that they had all the graves backdated.
Just minutes before 11 a.m., to the north around Mons, a 25-year-old Canadian private, George Lawrence Price, was on the trail of retreating German soldiers. It was street fighting. Private Price had just entered a cottage as the Germans left through the back. On emerging into the street, he was struck by the bullet which killed him.
But Private Price's death at 10:58 was not the last. Further south in the Argonne region of France, US soldier Henry Gunther was involved in a final charge against astonished German troops manning a machine gun post who knew the armistice was about to occur. What could they do? He too was shot. The Baltimore private, ironically of German descent, was dead. It was 10:59, and Henry Gunther is now recognized as the last soldier to be killed in action in World War I.
Almost as he fell, the gunfire died away and an appalling silence prevailed.
She is watching by the poplars, toilette with the sea blue eyes. She is watching and longing and waiting, where the long white roadway lies.
somewhere in France, but not for long. My dear parents, sisters, everyone, your letters arrived today telling how you celebrated the news of how Kaiser Bill accepted the peace terms. I was staying at the home of an old lady in a small town on that day. It was Sunday and we were eating a big dinner she'd cooked for us. We had only been off the line for 2 days and we were really enjoying the meal. Suddenly we heard loud cheering in the streets. And just then she came in with a paper. She was crying, laughing and talking all at once. All she could say was, "Fini la guerre, such a day has this been." I'll answer your letters tomorrow. All we have to do now is write and make faces at the Huns until things are finally settled. My fullest love to you all in this great hour. Your loving son.
Dear folks, arrived here.
Dear folks, arrived here in Paris last night and was on the street today when the armistice with Germany was signed. Anyone who is not here can never be told or imagine the happiness of the people here. They cheered and cried and laughed and then started all over again. Immediately a parade was started and has been going on ever since. In the parade were hundreds of thousands of soldiers from the US, England, Canada, France, Australia, Italy and the colonies. Each soldier had his arms full of French girls, some crying, others laughing. Each girl had to kiss every soldier before she would let him pass. There's nowhere on earth I would rather be today than just where I am. Home would be nice and is next, but Paris and France is free after 4 years and 3 months of war. And oh, such a war. Thank God it's over. I can imagine all the world is happy, but nowhere on earth is there a demonstration as here in Paris. I only hope the soldiers who died for this cause are looking down upon the world today. It was a grand thing to die for. The whole world owes this moment of real joy to the heroes who are not here to help enjoy it. I cannot write any more. Lovingly, your boy, Charles.
Wilfred Owen was a teacher working in Europe at the outbreak of war. His visit to a hospital for injured soldiers compelled him to return to England and enlist in the army. He was injured in March 1917 and spent 18 months recuperating back home before being declared fit for duty. He returned to the war in August 1918.
Head to limp head, the sunk-eyed wounded scanned yesterday's mail, the casualties typed small, and large, vast booty from our latest haul. Also, they read of cheap homes not yet planned. For, said the paper, when this war is done, the men's first instincts will be making homes. Meanwhile, their foremost need is aerodromes. It being certain war has but begun. Peace would do wrong to our undying dead. The sons we offered might regret they died if we got nothing lasting in their stead. We must be solidly indemnified, though all be worthy victory which all bought. We rulers sitting in this ancient spot would wrong our very selves if we forgot. The greatest glory will be theirs who fought, who kept this nation in integrity. Nation? The half-limbed readers did not chafe, but smiled at one another curiously, like secret men who know their secrets safe. This is the thing they know and never speak, that England one by one had fled to France, not many elsewhere now, save under France. Pictures of these broad smiles appear every week, and people in whose voice real feelings ring say, how they smile. They're happy now, poor things. Wilfred Owen, late September 1918.
Just a week before the end of the war, he was killed by German machine gun fire. Such was the speed of communication that his parents, who were sitting in their Shrewsbury home at 11 a.m. on the 11th of November, happy that the war was over and that their son had survived, were disturbed by a knock on the door.
It was a telegram informing them their son was dead.
After the blast of lightning from the east, the flourish of loud clouds, the chariot thrown, after the drums of time have rolled and ceased, and by the bronze west long retreat is blown, shall life renew these bodies? Of a truth, all death will he annul, all tears assuage, or fill these void veins full again with youth, and wash with an immortal water age? When I do ask white age, he saith not so, my head hangs weighed with snow. And when I hearken to the earth, she saith, my fiery heart shrinks, aching, it is death. Mine ancient scars shall not be glorified, nor my titanic tears, the seas, be dried. Wilfred Owen.
Hero. Jack fell as he wished, the mother said, and folded up the letter that she'd read. The colonel writes so nicely. Something broke in the tired voice that quavered to a choke. She half looked up. We mothers are so proud of our dead soldiers. Then her face was bowed. Quietly, the brother officer went out. He'd told the poor old dear some gallant lies, that she would nourish all her days, no doubt. For while he coughed and mumbled, her weak eyes had shone with gentle triumph, brimmed with joy, because he'd been so brave, her glorious boy. He thought how Jack, cold-footed, useless swine, had panicked down the trench that night in the mine went up at Wicked Corner, how he'd tried to get sent home and how at last he died, blown to small bits, and no one seemed to care, except that lonely woman with white hair, Siegfried Sassoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Highwood, called by the French Bois des Fourneaux, the famous spot which in 1916, July, August and September was the scene of long and bitterly contested strife by reason of its high commanding site. Observe the effects of shell fire in the trees, standing and fallen. Here is wire. This trench, for months inhabited, 12 times changed hands, they soon falling, used later as a grave. It has been said on good authority that in fighting for this patch of wood were killed somewhere above 8,000 men, of whom the greater part were buried here. This mound on which you stand being, Madam, please, you are requested kindly not to touch or take away the company's property as souvenirs. You'll find we have on sale a large variety, all guaranteed. As I was saying, all is as it was. This is an unknown British officer, the tunic having lately rotted off. Please, follow me. This way. The path, sir, please. The ground which was secured at great expense, the company keeps absolutely untouched. And in that dugout, genuine, we provide refreshments at a reasonable rate. You are requested not to leave about paper or ginger beer bottles or orange peel. There are waste paper baskets at the gate. Philip Johnston.
Round goes the wheel of fortune, don't be afraid to ride. There's a land of milk and honey waits on the other side. There'll be peace and there'll be plenty, you'll never need to roam when we go rolling when we go rolling home. Rolling home when we go rolling home, when we go rolling, rolling when we go rolling home. The gentry in their fine array do prosper night and morn, but we into the fields must go to plough and sow the corn. The rich may hold the power, but the glory's ours alone. When we go rolling home, when we go rolling home, rolling home, when we go rolling home, when we go rolling, rolling when we go rolling home, rolling home when we go rolling home, when we go rolling, rolling when we go rolling home.
Poems by women. Vera Brittain, well known for her wartime reminiscences, Testament of Youth, realised that nursing had saved her from personal despair over her losses of her lover and brother. When the war ended, she was in a state of numb disillusion. On Armistice Day, she wrote, "All those with whom I had really been intimate were gone. Not one remained to share with me the heights and depths of my memories." To my brother, in memory of July the 1st, 1916. Your battle wounds are scars upon my heart, received when in that grand and tragic show you played your part 2 years ago. And silver in the summer morning sun, I see the symbol of your courage glow, that cross you won 2 years ago. Though now again you shrapnel fly, and bear the guns that daily louder grow, as in July 2 years ago. May you endure to lead the last advance, and with your men pursue the flying foe, as once in France 2 years ago.
The lament of the demobilised. 4 years, some say consolingly. Oh well, what's that? You're young, and then it must have been a very fine experience for you. And they forget how others stayed behind and just got on. Got on the better since we were away, and we came home and found that they had achieved, and men revered their names but never mentioned ours. And no one talks heroics now, and we must just go back and start once more. You threw 4 years into the melting pot. Did you indeed? Those others cry. Oh well, the more fool you. And we're beginning to agree with them. Vera Brittain.
When men are old and their friends die, they are not so sad, because their love is running slow and cannot spring from the wound with so sharp a pain. And they are happy with many memories and only a little while to be alone. But we are young and our friends are dead suddenly, and our quick love is torn in two. So our memories are only hopes that came to nothing. We are left alone like old men. We should be dead. But there are years and years in which we shall still be young. Margaret Postgate Cole.
A short
extract
from the First World War play, The Accrington Pals by Peter Whelan. It was just something in the paper yesterday. That man who writes poems, I expect you saw it. You read things so well. Would you?
Oh, May, don't ask me.
Please. I'd like to hear it read.
There are tear-dimmed eyes in the town today. There are lips to be no more kissed. There are bosoms that swell with an aching heart when they think of their dear one missed. But time will assuage their heartfelt grief. Of their sons they will proudly tell how in gallant charge in the worldwide war, as pals, they fought and fell.
We also need to remember those who returned. In fact, there are 41 thankful parishes throughout England and Wales from which all soldiers returned, of which 5 are within the old Lincolnshire border, the closest being High Toynton. Dalderby, of the 11 men who enlisted, all but 1 returned. Survivors returned from the services to Horncastle and returned to civilian life as best they could. The descendants of these men still live in the town today, including members of our theatre company.
Take me back to dear old London. Put me on the train for London town. Take me over there, drop me anywhere. Liverpool, Leeds or Birmingham, well I don't care. I should love to see my best girl cuddling up against the should be. Whoa, today and the IT, honey homes are plenty. Plenty is the place for me.
Of course, for many families, the war would never be over. The fate of many of the missing was unknown. In the chaos and despair of the battlefield, soldiers disappeared entirely, never to be seen again. At the same time, bodies were recovered from the mud of no man's land, with no way to identify them, save what remained of their uniforms.
The idea of a tomb of the unknown warrior to honour all war dead was first conceived in 1916 by the Reverend David Railton, who, while serving as an army chaplain on the Western Front, had seen a grave marked by a rough cross, which bore the pencil-written legend, "An unknown British soldier." The idea met with strong support from the Dean of Westminster, the King, and Prime Minister David Lloyd George.
Plans were put into action. Under cover of darkness, 4 bodies were exhumed from across the battlefields and placed in plain coffins draped with Union flags. From these, Brigadier Wyatt closed his eyes and chose one at random. The others were reinterred. The unknown warrior was transferred under guard to the ancient citadel at Boulogne and placed in a coffin of oak brought from Hampton Court Palace. A medieval crusader's sword chosen by the king was placed atop it.
A mile-long procession of French troops and schoolchildren made its way to the harbour, and the unknown warrior crossed the channel aboard the HMS Verdun with an escort of 6 battleships. From there, it was brought to London, Victoria, where the casket remained overnight.
November 1920, 2 years after the war had ended, the unknown warrior was drawn through the waiting immense and silent crowds from Hyde Park to Whitehall, where the cenotaph, a symbolic empty tomb, was unveiled by King George.
Finally, the unknown warrior was laid in state in Westminster Abbey at the far west end of the nave, in soil brought from the battlefields, capped with black Belgian marble.
Guests of honour at the burial were about 100 women, each one of whom had lost not only a husband, but every one of their sons to the war. an unimaginable loss. Tens of thousands of mourners passed by the grave while servicemen stood guard. The collective grief of a nation which found that itself scarred forever and forevermore to mourn.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember.
We will remember them.
We will remember them.